Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us on our weekly journey. We're going to connect to the portion of Metzora. Page 156. All right, let's get started.
Okay. We read about the strange spirit and the spirit of defilement that descend to earth whenever men are defiled below. Rabbi Elazar talks about when the plague of leprosy is sent to a house and how the house can be purified. He tells how a man who wants to defile himself is defiled by bringing upon himself a second spirit of uncleanliness. He must be destroyed for the world to be purified.
אמר רבי אלעזר, כתיב והזהרתם את בני ישראל מטומאתם וגומר. בטמאם את משכני אשר בתוכם, והזהרתם כהאי זר, דיהו זר מכולהו, ולה יתחבר במה דלתי דילה.
Rabbi Elazar cited that verse, "Thus shall you separate the children of Israel from their uncleanliness, when they defile my tabernacle that is among them." Thus shall you separate means like a stranger who is a stranger to everyone and is not bonded with that which is not his.
ותחת זה בשעתה דמיסתאבין בננשה לטאטא, מסאבין לון בחולה והאיתמר, אבל בשעתה דרוח מסעבה, יתאר לטאטא, יתאר רוח זר, רוח מסעבה, דילטאטא, יתאר רוח מסעבה. אחרה ויתיהיב לרשותה לנחתה, לעלמה מהי רשותה דקדושה דאבה, נחית ומחה ב, לה ישתכח ואיסתלק וכדן יתגליה. דינה לקבלהון דחייבין והוסיף דינה על דיני, וכדן תרן רוחין משתכחין בעלמה, חד רוחה דדינה וחד רוחה דין סעבה.
He explains his words, "Come and behold, when men are defiled below, they are defiled in every respect, as we have already learned. When the unclean spirit is roused below, by drawing the illumination of the left side from above downwards, a strange spirit arises, for the unclean spirit below rouses another unclean spirit. It obtains permission to go down to the world." He asks, "What kind of permission does it obtain?" He answers, "The same permission of holiness that formerly always came down and prevented that strange spirit from ruling. This spirit is no longer there because of the unclean spirit. For when it leaves, the judgment, which is the strange spirit, is revealed and confronts the sinners and augments judgment. Then there are two harmful spirits in the world. One is the spirit of judgment, namely the strange spirit, and the spirit of defilement."
אמר רבי אלעזר, הצטריכנה הכה לממר מילה דאוליפנה, מהבא תחזה הכה ילפינן מנגה. דביתה דחד רוח מסעבה שריה, בביתה וקודשה בריחו, באה לדכאה, לשדר נגה צרעת בביתה. לקדרגה דה בדה, והוא נגע לה עדה מבינה, והפלגה דרוח מסעבה, יסתלג מהו ביתה עד דאין תצון, ביתה אבנין והאין וכל הכדן, ידחה עטרה.
Rabbi Elazar said, "Here I must say something that I have learned from my father. Come and behold, see what we learned here in relation to the plague in the house. When the unclean spirit rests upon a house, and the Holy One, blessed be he, wants to purify that house, he sends a plague of leprosy there in order to make them denounce each other. The spirit of the plague fights that one of the uncleanliness. Although the unclean spirit is gone from the house, That plague does not depart from the house after overpowering the spirit of defilement until the house is shattered, stones, timbers, and all. Only then is the place purified.
כי היא גוונה מן דהסתאווית ארוחה מסעבה ושערי, הלא יכד באה. קודשה ברכו לדכאה עלמה, איתה רוח דינה תקיפה ואיש תכך. בעלמה ושריה, על ההוא רוחה מסעבה, ומקטרגה דה בדה עד יתבר בעלמה. והוא רוחה דינה תקיפה, לה יסתלק מאתרי, עד דינתץ אתר שייפין וגרמין וחולה, כדן ידחה עלמה, ויתעברו מיני רוחין מסעבין, ועלמה ישתכח בדחיו.
When a man is defiled and arouses the unclean spirit to rest upon him, and the Holy One, blessed be he, wants to purify the world, he arouses against him a spirit of stern judgment that remains in the world and rests upon that unclean spirit. They fight each other until he removes the unclean spirit from the world. That spirit of harsh judgment of the plague that is caused to depart from the world does not depart from the place until it is completely shattered, namely the body, the limbs, the bones, and everything. Only then is the world purified. The unclean spirits are removed, and the world is in a state of cleanliness.
Okay, so we can really go on and go on because it's really a fascinating chapter from the Zohar. It relates to many lessons, and we can start by talking about the idea of what's behind leprosy, which is the name of this portion, Metzorah. Metzorah, which means leprosy. Now it says when the leprosy comes into a house, what does it mean? Does it mean that it's the leprosy that we know from 500 or 1,000 or 1,500 years ago, whenever was the time, the high pitch of the leprosy? I don't know exactly when in history it was wreaking havoc. But what the Zohar means, and that was a text that was written 2,000 years ago, and it is extracted from portions of the Torah, which was written 3,400 years ago. So it was even back then, 2,000 years ago, 3,400 years ago. It's probably like something that is following humanity forever, and it's not only to illustrate the disease that we know as leprosy. And so when the Torah or the Zohar speaks about leprosy that comes into a house, there are different levels of leprosy. There is leprosy that goes into the walls of a house, or into the foundation of a house, or leprosy that goes into everything that's electronics, or into clothing, or ultimately like in not just like in the health of an individual, but there are even levels of diseases where there are parts, thank you, where there are parts that are concealed, where the person knows that the person is sick, but nobody else does. And then there is a level where people know, but you don't necessarily see it. And then there is, I would say almost the ultimate from, what the person has ultimately come to deny and ultimately come to cleanse in this world, is when he knows it, people around him knows it, and you can see it even physically. So there are levels in levels and different layers of levels where, if you will, a disease can be physical, can be emotional, can be spiritual, can be energetical. And so, reminds me also, of a place where you come into a house that you've never been to, or can be a shopping center, or can be like a village, or a place that you drive by, and you're suddenly submerged by a very heavily discomfort or uncomfortable feeling. of, that this place isn't good, or this place is negative, or it triggers insecurity or intimidation or whatnot. And there are places like this, especially if you are, hypersensitive. You could go to places in the world, and if in your nature you are sensible to to the things that have marked the soil or the walls or the air, or even the water of that area, of that city, you could tell so much just from having a energetical contact, or even just driving by. For those who have been with me like for a long time, I mentioned this, I think, a couple of times. One of the first times that I went to Paris to teach, there is a student that took me just for like a sort of like a touristic tour. Like it was like for an hour drive around the city, and he was showing me here and there. And there is so much to see, like you can't really see everything in an hour. And at some point, as he's getting closer to a certain district, and I don't know this much Paris, even though I've been there by now many times. I don't really know like what belongs to what historical part of, and a lot of things happen in Paris. And so we're driving by, or we're driving towards a certain direction, and I'm asking him to stop the car. I'm suddenly submerged with this claustrophobic feeling that I cannot breathe, and I'm feeling like I'm choking, and I'm feeling like super uncomfortable. And I'm asking him to go back, literally, like it's the first time anything like that ever happened to me. And I asked him to do a U-turn, and he did. He listened to me, and I guess he saw that how distressed I was. And I told him what's behind us. And he's telling me that's the Place de la Bastille. And Place de la Bastille basically is where all the executions were done during the revolution, and the guillotine, and chopping heads and things like that. And as I'm speaking about it, I'm getting goosebumps just to talk about it and think about it. And I don't know exactly what's the connection between me and that Bastille story. Probably had something to do with it. I don't know if I was a part of the victims, or part of the the one that was like hair cutting people, I guess. God knows what it was. But anyway, it really made me feel really uncomfortable, and I couldn't even get close to it. Now, you see it also a lot with children, because children, when they still have their innocence and their energy is pure. We spoke last time about the Tselem, about the shadow of the Creator, about that pure soul that is still intact, until we're starting to sin and manipulate and judge and victimize, etc. Until then, our energy source and our energy, gravitational energy, is pure. And so children are very intuitive. And so, they can see certain things, or they can talk to certain things that, you see kids like, 3, 4, 5-year-old, like you think that they're talking to themselves, and suddenly you see them talk to somebody. You need to know that they're talking to somebody. And it's not like a made up, like imaginary. There is no such a thing with kids. Like rarely there is like such a thing as an imaginary friend. They're actually talking to people that are right behind the fence. And the fence is like a very, very thick for us, because we don't see and we don't feel anything. Like we're way beyond lost cause of the 5 senses. But the kids, they're still there. Just hold on one second. Sorry about that. Made me run. Okay, where was I?
Estiel.
Yes, and I was talking about the kids. And so children and, hypersensitive people, they are intuitive people, and us, catching up my breath. And there's still like a lot of people that are, very intuitive, to feel energies, to feel people, and to have like this deja vu, or to have, to have strong connections with people. And so if something is wrong with somebody that you're really connected to, like you would sense it, and either you send a text or you phone them and they say like, what's going on, and you would hear like countless of times like, you're calling me like right at the right time, like how did you know that something was up? And so that's true, with children, with innocence, but it's also true when you have a strong connection. It is also true when you lose somebody that is close, and especially when it's recent. And when it's recent, usually like it's like in the first year or two, and then it starts, sort of like dissolve or be more intermittent in the way that, it still happens. Like, I have like many examples, but I'm sure that you see what I'm talking about. So going back to the idea of leprosy, because almost every paragraph that we read from this chapter is like, it's like doomsday, or it's like, like one of Stephen King's, books or stories. And it's nothing to do with Stephen King. This is pure and simple reality. And it's not the reality that we are aware, because the rational intellectual mind is doing its best to diffuse this kind of reality, because it's very uncomfortable. It's much better for our conscious mind to be immature and to be irresponsible, and not to take responsibility, and not to forgive, and to hold on to grudge, and to hold on to the past, and not let go of certain things. So the conscious mind does that irrationally, and does that in a way that it is very spiritually immature, because when we grow up, it is almost like the common sense part that says, why did I hold on to certain things for so long? And so when we are holding on to those things, and when we are reactive or immature or irresponsible about the things that are taking place in our life, that leprosy, by the way, the leprosy is not, we can say leprosy comes in the house. Because if you read again and again what the Zohar says, leprosy is not the cause. Leprosy is the effect. And the cause is not those two spirits, the strange and the defilement that are the cause. They are the effect of our choices and behaviors. And so when we make certain choices, obviously that are not close to the light, on the contrary, then we're inviting this strange spirit and the spirit of defilement to create the space, and to create judgment, and to enhance that negativity in our life. Once a person is deep into that reality, it's very hard to come out. When it's very, like I would say, like surface, you can fall and then you can rise right back. But when you've dealt with the same thing for years, and sometimes lifetimes, the harder it is to get rid of certain layer of negativity, And the greater is the indication that we're dragging this for a few lifetimes, at least one, if not more likely more lifetimes. And as we progress in our spiritual journey, and we sometimes we fail to overcome what we came to accomplish in this world, that aspect that could have been come across to us as an opportunity to cleanse, and we failed it, that becomes even stronger. And stronger is, what would be like the ultimate of stronger? The ultimate of stronger is basically denial, that you're not aware that you have that klipa, this layer of negativity. Everybody can see it but you. So this is like on advanced level. Good job, you have reached advanced level in your layers of negativity, that you are totally oblivious, you're total denial, that you came to correct certain things. And even if somebody that is dear to you and cares about you would come and say, hey, what do you think about trying to, walking on eggs to pass on the message to you? And as soon as either the message comes out and you like explode, or you're like, what are you talking about? That's not me. And so this is like an advanced stage. And so when the advanced stage is hitting in all sorts of ways, because, as you continue reading the Zohar, the Zohar tells you, like, when we are opening the door as a result of our choices and actions and behaviors, we are not just opening the door where we lost it, where we got reactive. So it can be maybe with your kids, or it can be with your marriage, or it can be with your neighbors, or it can be with your certainty about certain things, or doubts about certain things. That's not necessarily where it's going to hit you, because it would be too obvious, right? And the evil inclination wants to do everything but the obvious. And so that's where, like, the rule of quantum, what does it mean? Like, the rule of quantum comes in and kicks in, where when you are, and I'll use the opposite, which is also true, that when you do something good, then you draw something good to affect you in any aspect of your life. If you do something good in your marriage, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to land back in your marriage. It is going to land back exactly where you need it most in your life. And so even if you have like this agenda that you're sharing for the sake of receiving something specific, and you don't see it, you certainly received what it is that you needed in an area that was like the most urgent, and you don't see it. Why? Because you're focused on other things where you think you need the most. But the universe, the light, God, our teachers, our messengers, our angels, our guides, they are directing this light back in an area of our life where we need it the most. It can be healing, it can be soulmate, it can be good health, it can be sanity, it can be to remain centered, it can be all sorts of things. It can be channeling good ideas, it can be restriction, it can be enhanced ability to push back certain addictions. Like, we don't see, like, we're not connected obviously to the big picture, because it's not physical. All the things that we're discussing that I just listed, they're not physical, so it's not as tangible, right? So when you go out and you take like a physical action of sharing and selflessness, etc. This is the way that we measured that we did something right, that we did a good deed, a positive deed. We did an action, because this is how we measure. We don't know how to measure things that are not tangible. How much did you share? Oh, energetically, I gave my entire self. You have no idea what is your entire self, because your entire self as essence is infinite. We're not even close to understand what is the capacity that we have to share, because we are so, measuring, calculating everything that we give, because we're always afraid when we share that when we are going to be left with less than what we gave. So we're very meticulous, with physical things, with money, even with time. How do you measure the time that you have to give? It can be to somebody that is really dear to you. Like somebody would say, oh, you should really spend more time with your kids, or you should spend more time with your parents. And each and every single one of us is guilty as charged that we have a busy life. We have a busy life with work and with obligations and all sorts of things, and we really don't have time. Think about it. I'm not making excuse. We do not have time because we have gotten to a place where we are super busy. And you know what? This is one of the scheme of the opponent to make us super busy so that we don't have any time to think about anybody but ourselves, or gravitating at least around ourselves, and it can also be around our children and whatnot. And so there is this activity, that activity, this activity, like take them to swim and take them to karate, take them to soccer, take them to this. And then, your life is busy, and you can say, oh my gosh, like I'm so busy with the kids, and I'm so busy with this, and I'm so busy with that. But what about visiting your parents? Oh, I wish I had more time. And then suddenly the mother falls ill, sick, needs to go to the hospital, and you must take 3 days off or 7 days off to attend what's going on, the situation and everything. And the universe, after you said, I don't have time, the universe comes with a kick in the back and says, you see, you have time. So it really is totally relative because, in order for a cleansing to occur, something has to be stripped off. And so what the Zohar here is saying when he talks about, as an example, when the leprosy comes into a house, like everything has to come apart. For that leprosy, again, the leprosy is already it's accomplished fact. The leprosy is not the cause. The disease is not the cause. The space is not the cause. The divorce is not the cause. The loss of a job is not the cause. The loss of health is not a cause. And not speaking to somebody that you used to be best friend with is not the cause. Those are different aspects of leprosy. There are different aspects of diseases and space and lack of light. They're not the cause. They're just the effect. And when it reaches the level of Metzora, the level of leprosy, which means in one way or another, I enhanced lack of light in an aspect of my life that is now coming out. And in order for that to be purified, oftentimes it needs to be taken apart or ripped off, ripped away from me. And so when those things are being ripped away from me, and it can be the loss of all sorts of things, truly, even if it's hard in the process, it's hard to compute. We truly need to see this as a blessing. Why? Because if I go back to what the Zohar is saying, hope I can quickly find again what the Zohar said, but basically it's when the Holy One, blessed be He, wants to purify. And so He arouses against him a spirit of stern judgment that remains in the world and rests upon that unclean spirit. And so when something is being shaken in our life, and it doesn't just look and it doesn't just feel, it is judgment. It is negative. There are certain things in our life that are taking place, that are happening, that we can just label them something else. And you can't just say, oh, it's a blessing in disguise. There is no playing spiritual advocate here. We need to know that something is coming out and it needs to be purged. It is my doing. It is my doing. And it is the call of the universe, the call of the Creator that wants to purify, that deemed that I was meritorious, that I had the merit to be cleansed of that, so that this negative thing that is happening right now is part of the process for me to be cleansed of whatever it is that I created that now needs to be purged. And so When things are going great, it's a great sign, but it's also, I would say, in some cases, when the person is pure and spiritual and humble, because I know a lot of people that are spiritual and doing the right thing and praying and teaching and whatnot, but they are everything but humble. And so you see that all the attention and all the respect and all the is drawn to them. And so that's not what I'm referring to. So when you see that a person is really doing the right things and the next right thing and the next right thing, all together, keeping the humbleness as a centerpiece of their spiritual work, that's great. But when people are doing the spiritual work and they're not centered, and on the contrary, they're self-centered, then it's not necessarily a good sign that everything seems to be fine for them and everything seems to be working out. There is at least one person that can see that this picture is stained and is not clean and is not pure. You don't see it wrong. Even if somebody is going to shame you or name you all sorts of like different things for how dare you, call this like that or be so judgmental, you need to know that if you're feeling something that you see that's supposed to be like all pure and all great and everything, and you feel like something is off, something is off. And if that person didn't receive yet the calling purge from the universe to cleanse what it is that they have created for themselves, first of all, they're still in the process of accumulation. They're still in the process, it's still like piling up. They still didn't reach like the summum, like the ultimate of how much garbage they're able to produce. And if nothing bad has happened to them and you know that something is off, it's just a matter of time. Just do yourself a favor and don't be the judge. Don't be the creator. Trust the creator. If you saw something and you brought it to the attention of whoever is in position and whatever, and and they like bounce you back or like just waved you off or whatnot, it's not time yet. And you need to trust the process, and every single person is abiding by the same rules of cause and effect. This is in case you have witnessed uncleanness in a space of cleanness, which is like twisted, right? Like you're meant to be in a space of cleanness and purity, but it's basically the opposite. And there are few of us that could see through what's happening, but it's not changing. And if it's not changing, you know what? Trust the light, trust the universe, trust the process that every person is abiding by the same rules of this universe. Nobody, to my knowledge, is floating in the air, flying over their responsibility of cause and effect. Everybody abides by the same rules. Now, coming back to you, if anything is taking place in your house, in your family, in your neighborhood, in your friendships or whatnot, and you see that something is off, you right away need to raise the red flags and go into self-search, self-introspect. What are the things that the universe, God, wants me to cleanse, wants me to purify? How can I do it better, the best that I can? Because obviously we don't want to be sick in any way, physically, spiritually, emotionally. We want to be purified, and we want to go back to a place where we are the closest to the light and to the initial, going back on track to the initial trajectory of what I'm meant to accomplish in this life. It's not an easy task. I remember somebody that every Monday and Thursday, something was breaking in the house. And it was always around electric stuff. the washing machine, the TV, the dryer, this thing, that every single week something was breaking. How is that possible? Every single week, something is off. So you end up, obviously, you need those things, right? So you need to repair them. Nowadays, you cannot go without washer and dryer. Nowadays, you cannot go without a freezer and a fridge. Nowadays, a lot of people still cannot go without TV or without a phone. And so this is another example to money. So we say, oh, I don't have money, I don't have money, I don't have money. The TV breaks. My gosh, if the TV breaks, suddenly you found $1,500. Your phone breaks, just happens that it's out of warranty. Suddenly you find the funds to not just buy an iPhone, but buy the latest iPhone. Or if I'm already there, why not get the latest iPhone, right? I could get like the iPhone 11, the iPhone 10, the iPhone 8. It would cost me like $50, $100, but no, the 14 is coming out. And so I was like that. I have to admit, I have to confess, I was like that. I needed the latest gadget, but I matured a little bit. Now, if I have the iPhone 12, I need to wait at least iPhone 15 before I change. I need to wait at least, like I'm giving myself like some time, like I'm restricting. But anyway, so this whole idea of leprosy is like really something like to put in context, because we are not talking about the physical disease. We're talking about signals from the universe that already, when it gets to the level of leprosy, where everything needs to be tore down, it's when there is like a huge flood and you need to basically gut the house, or there is a fire, or there is an earthquake, or there is like something that makes it like, that's it, it's gone. So hopefully, you're insured and there is nothing wrong against being insured and rebuild, because something had to be like totally ripped from that and to start anew. And if you're given that chance, certainly we would have lost physical things, maybe even like emotional things, possible. But the fact that it was all taken away, it means that everything was infected. Everything was infected with the energy, because when you spread energy, the energy is not going to say, oh, I'm going to touch this and I'm not going to touch that. It just spreads everywhere. It's like what do you call it? It's like airborne. It's like energy borne. And so there is no filters to where that negative energy is going to go away, is going to go to. And so conversely, the same thing with when it's positive. And the positive is when everything is going great and you're doing the right thing and you're remaining humble servant, humble spiritual worker, etc. And you're sending positive energy, healing energy to everybody. Even like 5 years ago, 6 months ago, you would think about, like this political party, and you would like, lose it and be judgmental and whatnot, but you're already spiritual. After all the classes that you're taking on a weekly basis, you're all already spiritual. And so, when at this stage, when there is that political group or this president or this prime minister that comes on the screen, and I used to like curse or say certain things that were not so nice. So today I'm in a different place. I'm like sending blessings, and I'm just like being sarcastic, just in case you didn't follow. But that's really where we want to get to that place that we are more alert and more awake to the signs. We don't want to wait for the point of no return. And listen, even if it's the point of no return and there needs to be a purge, yes, there is a blessing in disguise, because the universe gives me a second chance. The universe tells me, you know what? I need you. I need this individual, this person to continue on the path I am with whatever is happening, recentering, putting back on track this person even if there was like a restart, it doesn't matter. You really mean a lot to me, a lot to the mission of spreading whatever it is that you came to accomplish. And you are needed, you're loved, and you're safe, and you can go ahead and restart your mission. Now, that's one case, like when there is like this leprosy that needs to be purged. But we can also start reading better the signs. Reading better the signs where, first of all, I know that I am stubborn. I know that I have my ways to look at things, to conclude and to judge and to jump to conclusions, etc. But what I know even more is that I am on a spiritual path. My intention is good, and I'm a work in progress. But I'm asking the light to show me with as much clarity, and I am doing everything that I can on a daily basis to be more open through meditations, through prayer, through scanning, through writing letters and burning them of things that I was holding on to, that was hard for me to forgive or to still be resentful of. Like, there are so many things that we can do, in the process of our spiritual work, so that we can prevent in so many ways reaching that point of no return. It is a point of no return because this belonging, this relationship, this physical connection or whatnot is going to be torn, is going to be restarted, and maybe it's going to be the end, but it's going to be also the beginning of something else. And that's the beauty, in other words, when we're speaking spirituality, is that wherever there is an end, there is the beginning of something else. And we want to, in spite of sort of like the depressing aspect of leprosy and something having to be torn apart in order for us to rebuild anew. It's the new that we need to feel blessed by, because there are some people that just don't get second chances. There are people that just don't get that luxury of the universe, God choosing them over again. And it's not that if you die, God doesn't choose you, because ultimately we get another chance to come back. But at least in this lifetime, just look around and see what's happening today by turning on the news, and like every 5 minutes there is something else that's happening. If it's not in 25 plus wars that are current right now in the world, it's not just like everybody's like centered over Putin and Zelensky and Ukraine and Russia. There are almost 30 wars that are currently active, and currently people are dying every minute, every other minute in one of those wars. And so if it's not a war, it's an epidemic. If it's not an epidemic, it's another thing. And it's like people forget that death in car crashes, death of cancer, death of smoking is like, the numbers are like so much bigger than COVID. But we had like such a focus on COVID that it's like almost like the rest didn't exist, but people were keeping on dying from cancer and all sorts of other things, and dying like crossing the street, or plane crashes, and all sorts of things like that. So again, I'm doing my best around this session, like not to be like depressing, but hopefully taking from this that we need to be appreciative that we are, first of all, blessed that we breathe, blessed that we keep on trying and attempting to be more spiritual and growing still even further. And that just reminds us, like, just if you forget for a second and you go back to being a victim or feeling like you don't have enough in any aspect of your life, just turn on the news. Turn on the news for 5 minutes, and that would humble you like 10 times fold compared to the issues that you are encountering. So this is it for this evening. Do you guys have any questions, comments?
I have a quick question. I think it's quick. You mentioned about writing letters and burning them. Now, I've heard of this in my life. I've heard about the idea of just like getting something out, up and out, and then, sort of you're releasing it and then you're destroying it. But how does that work energetically from why you would be mentioning that as an example?
Mhm. Just give me 1 minute. Okay, so I have a little surprise for you. So although I understand the concept and I'm sharing it, I'm not a fervent, let's just say, practicing of the burning aspect, but my wife does it all the time. And so I asked her to take 2 minutes to explain the process of, writing letters and burning and why she does it and, and what she feels through the process. So I'm just gonna let her
Thank you.
explain.
Okay.
Okay. Hi, everyone.
Hi, Rebecca.
Hi, everybody. Okay, so Yehuda totally put me on the spot, but that's nothing new. Okay, so the letters he asked me to share with you. So,
You
first of
didn't
all,
say you had to read them.
no, I won't. But the process, right? The process behind it, like, and the point behind it.
Yeah.
Is that what you, okay.
Yeah.
So, just to be clear that this is not something I like invented, of course, something that I learned from a teacher of mine and she learned from her teacher. But essentially the idea is that we make all sorts of vows and promises to ourselves in this life. And we also made vows and promises to ourselves in previous lives that we might not even be necessarily clear about. And the idea of the letter is to release ourselves from that vow and to then write a new kind of agreement with the universe. Because when we made that vow, and again, it can be, something that we remember doing. It could be something maybe we don't remember doing, but can come back to us, as we do our spiritual work, or emotional work, the emotional work on ourselves. When we make a promise to ourselves or to God or to the universe in general, where it's binding on some level. It's like a contract. And so whatever it is that it creates something that could then create blockage and limitations in our life. For example, I have someone who I work with who made a vow, like a promise to never have children when she was much younger, because she felt like the world was not the best place to bring children into. And then fast forward 20 something years later, she wanted to have children and she had a really hard time. And eventually she has a child now. She had through surrogacy, she could never carry a child. So, from her perception, she believed, for example, that she made this vow, like to never have kids. And then, it created something within her body, right, that she wasn't able to carry. And so when we want to, what we can do is we can write out the vow, and then we can write a new agreement with the universe, which, you know, would look something like, I agree to, you know, I don't know, to, or I would, you know, I agree, or I believe that bringing children to the world is beautiful, right? And it's something that I would like to do in my lifetime, something like this. Like you're writing basically a new agreement, like a new contract. And the process is to write out the old vow and the new agreement, and make a copy of each. And you burn one copy when you first write it, and then you read it to yourself out loud. You read just, so you put, you have the second copy, and you read the new agreement to yourself once a day for 32 days. And on the 32nd day, then you burn the copy of the old vow and the new agreement. And I personally, I don't, I think you just said I do it all the time. I've done it a few times, and I've seen like an incredible shift throughout the whole process, but especially when I first write out the letter and the new agreement and burn them. But it's also important to kind of get to the root of whatever it was that really created that, like whatever it was that really put you in the space where you made that initial vow to, you know, with the universe, right? So not just, for example, with this person that I'm working with, like I made a vow not to have children, but I made a vow not to have children. I really believe that the world was a bad place. I released myself from these feelings of like not being able to be a good enough mother. You really want to get to the root of why it is that you made that vow in the first place, is even more important than just the vow itself. Because that's again, like the root, like the seed level of why you created it. And that's what's most important to uncover, because then in your new contract, you're believing in yourself. Like I said, you agree to believe in the goodness of humanity, whatever it is. It's much bigger than just, I want to have children. It's more, more about getting to the root of that belief. So I hope that was helpful. If you have any questions, I'm happy to share.
Thank you so much.
More another time. Have a great night.
Okay. So I hope that she answered your question.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That was really special. Thanks.
You're welcome. Anything else, guys? We're good for tonight. Thank you very much, and have a blessed and beautiful week. If I remember very quick, what did we say about tomorrow? You were supposed to do something for a couple hours last Tuesday, and do something different tomorrow. Yes? Okay, what was it, Ellen? Just remind everybody.
Was making a list of things that, sorry, my dog is climbing up there. I don't know what she's doing. Make a list of the things that, choices you could make to raise your consciousness, raise your intentions by maybe doing things differently, and try not to judge yourself, or at least think about, is this feeding my ego, or is this
right? So last week we were about just like taking those 2 hours and take note, right? And tomorrow it's not about the taking notes. Tomorrow it's about breaking habits. Now, if you had a habit of doing good, don't stop that. But if you had a habit to do things that are important, but not necessarily enhancing your soul, enhancing your image, your Tselem Elokim, then commit yourself tomorrow from 10 to 12 or whatever couple hours that you choose tomorrow, that you'll do differently to enhance your image. So that was in continuation of last week. So, and a lot of things to think about from today's class. So thank you very much. Have a beautiful week, and we meet again next Monday. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank